I've made the point, people keep trying to label me as a conscientious objector. And, while I am not a huge fan of war, I feel like it is not completely unnecessary in every single situation. For example, I deployed to Afghanistan while I was in the military, and I did so willingly. And, had they recalled me and said, go to Afghanistan, I most likely would have not come to the same conclusion. But Iraq is an illegal occupation that has nothing to do with fighting the global war on terrorism, has everything to do with a few people making money, and has everything to do with promoting U.S. hegemony in the Middle East. And none of that has anything to do with fighting terrorism. So for me, as a service member, as an individual, I see it as my responsibility to oppose those orders and, if necessary, stand trial and court-martial in defense of my position, in defense of, the Iraqi people and also, my brothers and sisters still in the military being forced to prosecute an unwinnable and illegal occupation that is not benefiting the Iraqis, that is not benefiting the U.S., and is furthermore doing nothing to fight terrorism. In fact, is only fomenting the problem.
Now, your press conference here was, I guess, a couple of weeks ago. How long ago was it that you notified the Army that you were refusing to deploy?
May 16th. Yeah, I notified the world. I notified the military.
I see.
I have been on my Army Knowledge Online account since and have been carrying on conversations with troops on both sides of the debate here. And, a lot of them I have full support. I have complete support from many military members. In fact, a lot of people I used to know in the military have been defending my actions online and in different forums. And, yeah, everybody was made aware of my decision at the same time.
Okay, and so have you heard from your commanding officer or from the DOD as to whether you're going to be charged or not?
I have not. Technically, according to them, I don't think I've done anything illegal in their eyes yet. I have announced to the world that I will not be reporting for duty on June 15th, as ordered. And, at that time, if I don't show up, which I won't, I will be considered AWOL by the military. And I'm guessing I will hear something from them after that point. But until then, right now, I'm in Washington, D.C., and I am meeting with members of both the House and the Senate to try and build congressional support for my position. And, hopefully in doing so, we'll send, the message of legitimacy to the rest of my brothers and sisters so they can begin making decisions for themselves based upon, not just their oath of enlistment where they swear to uphold and to protect and defend the U.S. Constitution, but, also to their values as human beings and service members. If they see, hopefully, support for, my position coming from, places of power, they will understand that there is support for service members who are willing to, make these very, very hard decisions in these, very hardest times that I can remember in my country. So.
All right. Well, what's different about Afghanistan? I mean, the Arab Afghan army, the Friends of Osama bin Laden, they escaped from Tora Bora back in 2001. Yeah. So what could possibly be fighting the war against terrorism in helping prop up the government of Hamid Karzai and fighting a civil war against the Pashtuns?
Well, first of all, I do not feel that the U.S. has done right by our Afghani brothers and sisters at all. However, I feel the justification for invading Afghanistan was there. I feel that there was.
Well, my question is about the continued occupation of the place, not the attempt to catch Osama and them back in 2001.
Right. Well, as far as the continued occupation, I have mixed feelings about it. However, I do not feel that in order to go to Afghanistan is on the same level of illegality as in order to deploy to Iraq and support that illegal occupation.
Can you cite which laws it is that are being obeyed this time, or in this case, as opposed to the other? Or what the difference is legally?
My stance is specifically on Iraq, and I'm not out trying to debate with people the legality of Afghanistan. I'm very much sticking to Iraq here. So, I can talk about laws we're violating in Iraq. I can talk about laws we violated going into Iraq. However, I'm just not here to address Afghanistan.
All right. Well, so what exactly was your job as a photojournalist in Afghanistan? You worked for Stars and Stripes, or what?
Well, I was working for U.S. Army Europe at the time in their Command Information Office. I was conducting missions, having to do with strategic communications, and I produced stories. A story that I produced from Afghanistan was about an army unit from Hohenfels, Germany, actually, who played the OPFOR, the opposing forces. They were a training unit, and Hohenfels is a training base. So military members would go there to train, and these guys, Delta 1-4, would dress up in Middle Eastern garb and carry AK-47s. And these guys from this non-deployable unit got orders to deploy to Afghanistan under the direct command of a Romanian battalion. And so that is the first time that that's happened in the global war on terrorism, so I went to produce stories and cover the operations they were conducting there in support of the first parliamentary elections in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And I believe those stories are probably still online. But it was my job to produce news stories and feature stories and photographs about the Army in the Army's best interest. So I call that propaganda. But that is a term we were taught not to use while I was in the military. We were told we are not engaging in propaganda. We are engaging in strategic communications. And that, by strategically communicating the Army's point of view, we were, in fact, we were providing balance to the quote-unquote liberal media who was on a mission to make us look bad no matter what kind of story it was. So, yeah, and it wasn't just in Afghanistan. I produced many articles that I look back on and say, boy, and even at the time I knew it, and it killed me to be leaving out important pieces of information in exchange for putting a good face on our operations, no matter where they were, no matter, what the purpose, no matter the legality or illegality. And in doing this job, as you heard in my testimony, I came across many folks talking about Iraq and what they did there. And as I heard these testimonies from the front lines of Iraq, I began piecing together a picture that was not one of an occupying force acting above all in the best interest of the Iraqi people. I was hearing stories of prisoner abuse. I was hearing stories of unnecessary discharges of weapons. I was hearing stories, of all different types. But as a military journalist, I felt it was my job to omit and, in fact, completely delete these details in exchange for the rosier picture that we wanted to put on an occupation that has long since been doomed to failure.
What you say about your job as a propagandist, basically for the U.S. Army, the key wasn't in really manufacturing a bunch of lies. The key was in omitting the details that provide the accurate context for the rest of the story that actually does make it to print, right?
Exactly. I was very much about, my job I felt was very much about not making up facts, but framing a story in a way that made us look like liberators, that made us look like heroes, and did not actually tell the story of the real suffering being caused by our presence in the Middle East.